What if the biggest mistake in the automotive industry wasn't building electric vehicles, but assuming the entire world was ready for them? A few years ago, asking that question would have sounded absurd. Every headline pointed in the same direction. Every conference presentation, every investor report, every government announcement seemed to reinforce the same conclusion. The future was electric, and it wasn't even close. Tesla was breaking records. Chinese automakers were expanding faster than anyone expected. Countries around the world were announcing timelines to phase out gasoline engines. The momentum felt unstoppable. To most people, the race was already over, and yet, while the rest of the industry charged forward, one company appeared to be moving in slow motion. Toyota, the same company that had transformed transportation, decades earlier suddenly found itself being criticized from every direction. Analysts questioned its strategy. Investors worried it was missing the biggest transition in automotive history. Some experts even wondered whether Toyota had become too cautious to compete in a rapidly changing world. At first glance, the criticism seemed justified. While competitors unveiled ambitious electric roadmaps, Toyota appeared reluctant. While others talked about replacing gasoline entirely, Toyota kept talking about hybrids. While the industry celebrated a single vision of the future, Toyota continued insisting that the answer might be more complicated. What almost nobody realized was that Toyota wasn't falling behind. It was studying a different problem, and the company believed everyone else might be looking at the future through the wrong lens. Because behind closed doors, engineers were asking questions that didn't generate headlines. What happens when someone lives hundreds of kilometers from the nearest fast charger? What happens when electrical infrastructure expands slower than governments? Expect what happens when millions of drivers simply want transportation that works without changing their daily habits. Those questions weren't exciting, but they were real, and Toyota suspected that reality would matter far more than predictions. At the time, few people paid attention. After all, why would they? Electric vehicles were dominating the conversation. Every month brought another breakthrough. Longer range, faster charging, bigger batteries, more powerful software. The future seemed obvious, but Toyota kept looking beyond the markets receiving the most attention. Instead of focusing only on wealthy urban centers, the company looked at rural communities, developing countries, regions with unstable electrical grids, areas where charging infrastructure existed mostly on paper. The more Toyota studied the world, the more it saw a problem, not a problem with electric vehicles themselves, a problem with assuming one solution could work everywhere. And that realization would eventually shape one of the most controversial strategies in the automotive industry. Because Toyota wasn't trying to build the most advanced vehicle possible, it was trying to build something that worked for the greatest number of people. At first, that distinction sounded subtle. Later, it would become everything. For years, Toyota quietly argued that transportation would likely evolve through multiple paths at the same time. Electric vehicles in some places, hybrids in others, potentially hydrogen in specific markets. The idea sounded old-fashioned. Many critics interpreted it as hesitation. Others called it a lack of vision. But Toyota continued moving forward anyway. And then something unexpected happened. The market started revealing cracks. Not catastrophic cracks. Not enough to stop the EV transition, but enough to force difficult conversations. Charging infrastructure expanded more slowly than some projections predicted. Battery prices remained higher than many consumers hoped. Travel continued creating concerns for certain buyers. In colder climates, performance fluctuations became a recurring discussion. Questions that had once been dismissed as temporary obstacles suddenly refused to disappear. And for the first time, Toyota's position didn't sound quite so outdated. But this only matters once you see what happened next. Because while everyone focused on the debate surrounding electric vehicles, Toyota was quietly redesigning something most drivers never think about: the hybrid. And this is where the story starts to get uncomfortable. Not because Toyota had discovered some secret technology, but because it had identified a possibility few people wanted to consider. What if the future wasn't being delayed? What if the future simply looked different than expected? While competitors chased larger batteries and longer electric ranges, Toyota focused on something much less glamorous: efficiency. The company began rethinking how every component inside a hybrid vehicle interacted with every other component. The gasoline engine, the electric motor, the battery, the software controlling everything in the background. Engineers weren't looking for dramatic improvements in a single area. They were looking for hundreds of small improvements working together. And those small improvements started adding up. Transitions between gasoline and electric power became smoother. Energy management became smarter. Power delivery became more seamless. The technology gradually faded into the background until drivers barely noticed it. Was there? That wasn't an accident. Toyota wanted the system to disappear. The vehicle would handle every decision. Automatically, the driver would simply experience movement. Effortless, reliable, predictable, exactly the qualities millions of consumers value most. But even that wasn't the real breakthrough. The real breakthrough was hidden somewhere few customers would ever see. Inside the battery strategy itself, for years, the automotive industry had treated batteries as the center of the entire revolution. Bigger batteries meant longer range. Longer range meant greater appeal. That logic made perfect sense, but Toyota approached the problem from another angle. Instead of asking how much battery capacity could be added, engineers asked how much efficiency could be extracted from less. The implications were enormous. Smaller batteries required fewer. Raw materials, they cost less too. Manufacture, they weighed less, they occupied less space, and because they continuously recovered energy while driving, they reduced many of the concerns consumers associated with full electrification. Every stoplight became an opportunity. Every braking event became a source of recovered energy. Every traffic jam became slightly more efficient. Millions of tiny moments, accumulating into something surprisingly powerful. And Toyota possessed one advantage that couldn't be built overnight. Experience. Decades of experience. Millions of vehicles operating in real-world conditions. Billions of kilometers of driving data. Every success, every failure, every lesson learned, all feeding into the next generation of systems. Suddenly, Toyota's patience no longer looked like hesitation. It looked like preparation. And once that realization began spreading, the entire conversation started changing, because Toyota wasn't competing against small companies. It was challenging some of the most influential players in the industry. Tesla continued betting on an all-electric future. Chinese manufacturers continued expanding aggressively. Other automakers refined their own strategies. Everyone believed they understood where transportation was heading. Toyota offered a different possibility. Maybe the transition wouldn't happen in one giant leap. Maybe it would happen in stages. Maybe the winning solution wouldn't be the most revolutionary. Maybe it would be the one that solved the most problems for the most people. That idea is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore, especially in regions where infrastructure remains years behind ambition. Especially in markets where affordability still matters more than innovation. Especially among consumers, who care less about the future of transportation and more about getting to work tomorrow morning, and that's why analysts are paying close attention today. Not because Toyota is guaranteed to win, no company is, but because consumer priorities may finally be moving closer to the questions. Toyota has been asking all along questions about cost, questions about reliability, questions about maintenance, questions about long-term ownership, questions that rarely go viral but influence millions of purchasing decisions every year. Which raises a fascinating possibility. What if the biggest advantage Toyota possesses isn't technology? What if it's timing? Because the real story was never electric versus gasoline. It was never batteries versus engines. It was never about choosing sides. The real story is about understanding what people actually need. And history has a strange habit of rewarding companies that understand reality better than trends. 25 years ago, many people laughed at hybrid vehicles. Today, hybrids are everywhere. Now Toyota is making another bet. Whether that bet succeeds or fails remains uncertain, but the outcome may reveal something much larger than the future. Of one company, it may reveal whether progress is really about finding a single perfect answer, or whether the smartest path forward is recognizing that different roads can lead to the same destination. And if that's true, then the future of transportation may end up looking very different from what everyone expected.